I'm great at like helping other people with their stuff, but when it's my own stuff. So when it's my own stressor or my own traumatic event or something big happening, it's like I revert back to when big things would happen when I was growing up in my house. And I think just that shutdown response, it's such a childhood thing. It's such an infantile thing to just be like, well, the world is burning around me. Who's going to save me?
I'm just going to crawl under my bed and hide.
It really is like that. And so when big things would happen in my house and it was a blow up or there was yelling or there was chaos or whatever, and that was like my response to just shut down and hide away.
Yeah,
and
like I said, you just blend into the wallpaper.
Yeah.
Right?
Welcome to the Becoming Sound podcast, where we dive into the tough stuff and try to find the humor in the hot mess of being an adult child. Join me as we peel back the layers on growing up in dysfunction, navigating substance abuse, mental health challenges, and everything in between.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Becoming Sound with Krista and Shannon. This is our little episode series called Oversharing with Shannon. And today we're going to talk about stress and how we handle it. And as adult children of dysfunction, we handle stress in different ways. And Shannon's got a lot going on right now in her life that's stressful. Yeah. So do you want to tell us about it?
No. Wait, can we address the elephant in the room? Like, why are we in my bedroom?
Yes.
First of all, the very first one was like in separate chairs, and then the next episode was, well, let's get close, let's get on the couch, and now it's like, you know what? How about my bedroom? Because my bedroom, I mean, this is where it all happens.
Yeah.
No, nothing happens here at all, actually. But next week we'll be in the bathtub. So
funny.
Stay tuned. No,
exactly.
The reason we actually chose to be here is because this is literally what Krista and I have done for years, which is not sleep together, don't get weird, but that we would go out, we would, blow off steam when we were both married, actually, and after.
And before, too.
And then when we were married, it was like, maybe once or twice a year, we would decide, hey, let's go out and, go dancing and have a couple drinks. And whether it was here or in the downstairs spare room, we would have like a little sleepover. And it always ended up with like stopping at 7-Eleven first and getting junk food and coming back.
Which was usually my idea.
Usually her idea, and it was chocolate and beef jerky and then making popcorn and cheesies and just getting in bed and fucking laughing.
Yeah, laughing and talking till way, way too late.
But it was
so much fun.
Yeah, so much fun. Good times. And then, so when we were having our last episode, we were like, where we should be? Because this is where we do our best shooting the shit is here.
Exactly.
So that's why we're here.
Exactly. So. This is.
Yeah. Anyways, so yes, very stressful weeks lately. And we thought about this as a topic because I was thinking about what is happening in my personal life right now, which is that at work, I'm part of a union and we are in strike action right now, which is not fun. I obviously support it and I understand why we're doing it, but it's very stressful financially. And so I'm kind of going through it. And I was thinking about how I reacted to sort of the news that we're striking, which is funny because it is exactly how I have reacted my whole life with any kind of like big stressor, and it's usually dissociating, pretending that, this isn't happening. Nope, can't. I'm not dealing with that. I'm just going to shut the door. And this has happened, throughout my life. Every time there's been something that's been really big, and it's obviously a trauma response, I feel like I get so overwhelmed by it. Usually I can manage small stressors, and I'm really good at that. And I sort of compartmentalize if I have to. I'll deal with you later. That I'll deal with right now. But when it's something big like that, this is Pip. Welcome. When it's something big like that, it's like my brain does this power down. And I can't even, if I have like a flood in the basement, which I had my roof cave in the room across the hall. I came home and my roof had caved in, had no idea that there was even an issue. And it was, I literally froze in place, stared at it for a solid 2 minutes. And then I just kind of was like, I don't even know where to start. I'm just gonna shut the door. I'm gonna make myself an iced tea, and I'm just gonna kind of deal with that in a second. And so I just kind of do this mental shutdown, and I think that that's a trauma response. And I mean, it doesn't take far to figure out where that, if you start following the breadcrumbs of where that started, I think, for me, it's pretty obvious from like childhood. And so when big things would happen, I think I would just shut down or dissociate, or, I just get like overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And eventually I deal with it. And I kind of thought I was over that. And then when this strike thing happened, when the news came in, was actually going to be our very first time that we were going to meet and record. Mm-hmm. And I called you. We were going to meet, I think, on this Saturday. And I called Krista, or I messaged Krista on Friday night, because that's when I had found out. And I was just like, I'm not in a good place. I can't, I have no bandwidth for anything right now. So give me 24 hours and then we can talk about, maybe meeting. But that night I had to just unplug from everything and dissociate a little bit.
I mean, good for you for recognizing that. First of all, learning to recognize it and taking time for yourself. I mean, you and I have always been the type of friends that when one of us is like, no, I'm not doing that right now, we're like, okay, cool, we'll do it another day. As much of a people pleaser as I am, I never felt like I had to do that with you.
Totally.
You were the one person that was like, okay, it would just, nothing changes in our friendship.
Yes.
I don't have to do anything to manage it. We're just going to come together later. Exactly. We don't have to explain things to each other, which I love. But...
And that's actually such a good point, because at that moment I remember thinking, and I've got this thing tomorrow with Krista, and I got to just pull my shit together, and I got to figure this out and just freaking stop. Like, just stop. Like, I was spinning out, right? And then I thought about it, and I was like, of all things and of all people, I can reach out to you, and I didn't even have to like get into it until you got here the next day. But I could just say, you know what, lots happening. I'm just not in a good headspace. Can we wait? And you were just like, no problem.
I think years ago too, and I have done the same thing as dissociate. I do handle stress a little bit different. So when I am in that place of dissociation or like detaching, I definitely would have before just plowed through things and not paid attention to myself. Just like I would have done the people pleasing, or I would have done whatever was asked of me without a regard to my own mental health and push through things. Now I understand I don't do that. But I think that's something that you've learned to do, that is to actually take time for yourself and pay attention, like, hey, I'm not okay, right? And that's okay. I just need to take time for myself. There's so many other people that don't actually say those words. They don't do that. They just keep going like nothing's happening, and that you're creating more of a train wreck and you don't even realize you're doing it. So that like dissociation pattern where you're detaching, and then when you don't address it, it's like you're just creating momentum. Like that train is building speed, and then there's going to be a blow up, or there's going to be something that happens.
Where does that come from for you, do you think?
I think it probably comes from more of the control issue. I am good in an emergency situation. It's like I can manage 5 different things going on at once and right away figure out, okay, this is the best solution. Yeah. So anytime I've been in a crisis, like if I've been at an emergency, actual like car accident or something like that, just do exactly what needs to be done. I don't panic. I'm able to control the situation. But the control part, that's where the problem is because when I get really stressed or overwhelmed in the past, I would try to control what was going on. When I was a kid and there was chaos and stuff happening around, I would insert myself in the middle. So my brother and sister would disappear into the wallpaper and literally go hide or whatever their thing was. And Krista was the micromanager. Yeah. And I thought I could really control the situation. I was very fearful in a lot of situations where I thought, I need to protect my mom, or I need to do something to minimize all this chaos, and how can I get in the middle of it and stop it from happening. Most of the time it didn't work because I'm a kid. Like, you don't have control over that kind of stuff. But I thought I could.
Yeah.
And I thought it was my job to protect everybody. Now, going into adulthood, same thing. I thought it was my job to make sure my kids were protected. Okay, everyone's safe. But you're so micromanaging and controlling all these different scenarios and situations, you are completely detached from the emotion of it. You're completely detaching from actually processing the stress in your body. So I would hold a lot of stress in my body. I would just take it in and like push it down and push it down and push it down and manage everybody else and manage the situation, and then realize I'm sick, or it would manifest in other ways.
Yeah.
And I didn't recognize that until later in life. I didn't recognize that was happening. I was just trying to push it away. And so when stress comes up, I'm like, oh, yeah, I got this. Like, I am your girl in stress, right? I just know how to do A, B, C, D, E, and then everything's going to be good.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I'm like absorbing all this stuff and I'm not processing it. And then all of a sudden, I'm in my 30s, 40s, and things are happening to my body and I'm not recognizing what's happening. And when I started to do the healing work, more so in my 40s, I started recognizing all of these symptoms I had. This is stress manifesting in the body.
Yeah.
And I was just not addressing my feelings, the emotions of it. I was completely detached. My brain and my heart were not connected.
Yeah.
And, but that's not how I come off, right?
No.
Yeah.
Not at all.
That's the perfectionist.
Yeah.
In me. It was like just making it seem like it was all perfect.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, inside, I'm like a complete and utter mess, like not able to handle my stuff, but making it appear like I can handle everything on the outside. And that's, that was my stress management for sure. Was it ideal? Hell no.
No.
But I've learned to reconnect those parts of me.
Yeah.
And feel in the moment what I'm feeling. So yeah, so handling stress for sure. The other way was not ideal. Now I feel like I'm so much more in my body and in a space where if stress comes up, I really feel like I do try to control at first, but I'm able to recognize it faster. I'm able to like pause for a minute and say, oh, wow, okay, you cannot control this, Krista. You're just going to have to go with the flow.
Yeah.
You're going to have to flow with it, move through it, and see what happens on the other side. Anyway, so yeah, the control was probably my way of managing stress and very unhealthy. And it also comes off to other people as I'm just making things more difficult by trying to control other people and all of this stuff. And then I would have people upset at me, but not telling me that. I thought I was helping. I wasn't trying to be malicious or anything like that. I was trying to help manage everyone else's stress. And what I realize now with awareness is what I was doing was taking away people's opportunity to grow and learn from that. And it makes me feel so bad now. I know it's just a response, but all of the times when my kids were growing up and I'm trying to manage everybody's stuff, I realized, oh my goodness, I stole so much of their learning opportunities and their growth and their ability to manage their own stresses, to manage their own anxieties. And you see that later in life then when my kids have anxiety as young adults and they're just not able to manage that. It's like, oh my goodness. And I have to give myself a little grace. That's what I learned.
Yeah.
I learned that pattern of behavior from childhood. So I was just doing what I knew. You know, I didn't have the knowledge. I did what I was doing with the skills I had at the time. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. At one point, we need to have an episode on parenting.
Yeah. Yeah. We will definitely do one on parenting because there's just a lot.
But all of this is kind of connected, isn't it?
It is.
Like
It's all connected.
how we deal with a crisis or with stressors trickles down into like not only how we deal with our kids as parents, but also what we are like demonstrating for them on how to deal with stressors.
Yeah. Oh,
so it's like we're repeating our shitty patterns.
Yeah.
And we're doing it to our kids, for our kids, thinking we're helping our kids when we're actually, not always
it's so
helping the
linked to
situation.
everything we talk about. I mean, it really is. It's so linked to everything we talk about. And if we were to do like a 10-hour long episode, that we could talk about everything and how it's linked. But I mean, we're just breaking it into small pieces so people can relate and understand, how our programming and how we were brought up affects so many different aspects of your life. And then in turn affects so many different aspects of your kid's life and the people around you and the relationships you have and how you navigate the world around you just based on what you learned as a child. And I just want people to know too that these patterns aren't set in stone. This isn't who I am. It's not who I strive to be. It's not my personality. This is purely programming. This is purely developing patterns in childhood and then repeating those patterns throughout your life. And patterns can be changed. They can be transformed, all of that. This isn't a sentence for yourself or I used it as a chance to be down on myself for so long, and my worth is how I manage stress and anxiety and all that stuff. I felt like such a failure for not being able to manage that, right? And that trickles down into other parts of my life.
I think when you talk about what your response is to stress, and you really do, like it is a call to action for Krista. Like she is like, boom, boom, boom. And she's in there and she's managing. And I love that about you because I'm not always like that. In some situations I am. Like I work in a school. I should have my shit together when somebody comes in.
You
like
a
finger chopped off. You got to be having your shit together. But maybe it's when it involves me directly or something.
I was going to say, I find you, especially the stories you tell me about school and stuff, how you manage all of that stuff coming at you.
Some of it's really heavy.
And I'm like, wow, like she's managing this so well. Like, I don't know if I would have that response. Like your ability to engage your analytical mind and really help them manage is really good. But turn that internally and it's like a completely different.
Which is exactly what we talked about in the first episode, really. When I'm great at like helping other people with their stuff, but when it's my own stuff. So when it's my own stressor or my own traumatic event or something big happening, it's like I revert back to when big things would happen when I was growing up in my house. And I think just that shutdown response, it's such a childhood thing. It's such an infantile thing to just be like, well, the world is burning around me. Who's going to save me?
I'm just going to crawl under my bed and hide.
It really is like that. And so when big things would happen in my house and it was a blow up or there was yelling or there was chaos or whatever, and that was like my response to just shut down and hide away. And like I said,
you just blend into the wallpaper.
Yeah, right? Exactly. And so what I liken it to now, and you said this isn't who I am now, but I definitely, I was actually just talking to my cousin who, again, she's listening probably because she's following now. So we were we were just talking about how don't beat ourselves up about that first response. Whether it is a response to a parent or a response to a situation or whatever, that first response is still that little kid in you, right? That's that kid's response, and that's okay, and that's not going anywhere. It doesn't. We could be healed all over the place, and that's still going to be our knee-jerk response sometimes, and that's okay. It's what do you do with that? What do you do after that, right? It's after that is where the healed Shannon comes through, or the healed Krista. Right after that is what are you going to do with it? How are you going to change track with that? And so sometimes I'm like that too, where I have that first moment and I'm just like, shit, like why is that my first reaction is to be that snarky person or to be that sort of reactive person. And then it's just like, well, because of course, like that's not going anywhere.
No.
Healed or not, that's still part of me. Yeah. But then it's how am I going to respond now moving forward? What am I actually going to say in response to that? That's my healed person. That's the person that's going to say, I'm not going to pick a fight on that. That's not going to be my hill to die on. It doesn't matter that much. It's okay, right? It's fine. When big episodes happen, when something big happens, like, something's breaking down or I'm going on strike and I'm suddenly stressed about finances or whatever it might be, that's where that moment comes in. That's where little girl Shannon is just sort of frozen, deer in the headlights, need a moment, maybe 24 hours, right? But then after that, I'm like, Kate, well, guess what? You're a bad bitch and you're not going, this isn't, right?
Yeah.
I have my little pep talk with myself. It's like, princess, you're a bad bitch. You're not going to let this get you down. What are you going to do about it? And if it means moving some things around, if it means like initiating something I was hoping not to have to do, but now here I am doing it. And at the end of the day, it's going to be fine. It's not the best, it's not ideal, but it's going to be fine. And the sun's going to come up tomorrow, like we said last week, and it's going to be okay. But we can't help but let that moment happen.
And that's an amazing place to be in, is to be able to be in that space where you're actually able to talk yourself through it and manage within your own mind, not pushing your feelings aside, because I truly believe that we get so hard on ourselves when we take that initial reaction and then we dive down that hole and we lose ourselves in it.
Yeah.
We beat the crap out of ourselves.
We're like, oh, I'm regressing. Or I haven't learned a damn thing.
Exactly. That you let that negative internal dialogue just take control. And I believe there's a space and a time to allow yourself to sit in your crap. You know, like give yourself a time frame. Like, I'm going to take the next 5 hours. I'm going to eat the ice cream. I'm going to wallow in my sorrow. I'm going to feel sorry for myself, or whatever the case is. And then know that after that time period, you're actually going to say, okay, now I've allowed myself to do this. Now what am I going to do about it? Now how am I going to take charge and come from a place that I've done the work and the healing, not sit in that and 3 days go by and you don't even know what time it is or what day it is anymore. So getting to that place, getting from point A to point B, there's some work to be done there. And I feel like we've obviously done a lot of work in that space so we can do that for ourselves. And I do the same thing now. I don't wallow in that. I don't try to control everything too.
So that's growth, folks.
It is. It's growth.
It's growth. And I'm proud of myself for how I handle things, and it's okay to have those low moments and not beat ourselves up about it. I actually saw, do you know who Bill Burr is?
Yeah.
He's a comedian, and he was on Jimmy Kimmel, and it was just after wildfires in Los Angeles that have been happening the last few weeks. And his home was one of those things. And he's like really vocal about sort of him going to therapy. See, guys our age go to therapy, Krista. Right? Like he talks about all the time, like going to therapy and dealing with his stuff. And he had kind of a rocky childhood and stuff. And Jimmy Kimmel was like, so how are you in stressful situations? Because he's probably thinking you're probably a friggin' nightmare, right? Yeah. And he says, like, surprisingly, like, really good. He's like I in big situations like that, he said, I take charge, kind of like you. He's like, I take charge. I'm like, you do this, everything's gonna be fine, you guys. Let's just pack up. Let's get in the car. No, we don't need to worry about that. Let's go. And he's like, just kind of all business. And then that was kind of came off as surprising because of sort of his personality or how he seems. But he's like, and yet, the tiniest little thing, like my kids will be like, Dad, how can you be like so controlled and in a big stressor situation, and yet somebody puts the dial on the toaster too dark and you lose your shit, right? You're like, who touched this dial? Who keeps messing with this toaster? And just completely freaking out over like a toaster. Funny. And yet, half our city is burning and you're just like all business. And he's like, like it goes back to his childhood. And he's like, well, you guys, I could probably explain to you, but it's just too sad. So whatever. But it really is kind of probably really similar.
It's very similar to how I respond.
He said in big when something big was happening, when he was a kid, that's when the shit hit the fan, like with his dad, it sounds like, or whatever. He's like, shit hits the fan and everything's chaotic. And he just wants to just kind of stay in his lane and keep things chill. Whereas the little things are when he feels like he has a moment where he can really let out his anger, his stress or whatever. So I thought that was funny because I was like, well, that's Krista.
That makes a lot of sense for me too, because I feel like before I even started addressing and becoming aware of how I handled things and a lot of my programming and conditioning, I would react the same way. So I'm really good in a crisis, but at home I would freak out over little things,
toys
right?
being left out.
Yeah, or just little things set me off sometimes. I realized that when you don't address all the stresses in your life, sometimes it's like a building effect, and like the bomb goes off over one little thing.
Like you're projecting your frustration over some
Yeah,
big stuff
exactly.
over like the tiniest little thing.
But when there's a huge crisis and there's other people involved and there's a situation, it's like, yeah, I'm all business.
Yeah.
Like I can manage that kind of situation, no problem.
Yeah.
But that's funny, he says that. Someone set the toes
Yeah.
too dark and
I
you
was
freak
like,
out.
well, I got to take notes because that's Kate mentioned that because that's Krista.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's funny.
I think we're doing all right.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that I definitely have grown a lot, and I do still have to watch my tendency to think that, oh, I'm handling stress really well and pushing things aside. And flipping to the other side is like, I'm so zen, nothing bothers me, I'm chill, I'm cool, I'm not controlling anybody. And the reality is, if I go too far that way, I'm a mess in my head.
I was just going to say that. The other thing about you is that I'm like, well, shit, and we got to figure this out, and I guess I'm just going to have to. Whereas this one sometimes is in La La Land, and she's just like, oh, it's fine. Everything,
Exactly.
Shannon, everything works out. Yeah. Everything is going to be, you know what? The money will come from somewhere.
It sounds fluffy, but honestly, when you start reprogramming yourself to say things that keep you calm, I ended up saying it to other people and they're probably like,
yeah, I'm not there.
You know what? Shut up, bitch. I just want to feel it and blow up.
Yeah.
And I get that. It's like, it becomes my way of handling the really tough stuff, right?
Yeah.
And in a way that's great. And I'm glad I'm able to do that now instead of flip out over little things. But in another way, I have to check myself.
Yeah.
I have to really check myself. Am I just fluffing it over, or am I actually dealing with the stress, right? And so that's something I have to be aware of. And it's just asking myself questions like, what is really going on? How am I really feeling about this? Do I need to cry? Like, do I need to let my feelings out and not hold everything in? So I have to ask myself those questions.
Yeah.
It's easier now, but it wasn't at one time, right?
If I ask myself, do I need to cry? The answer is always yes. There's no question.
When I'm with another person, I have to stop myself and allow myself to cry. Like when I'm with my partner, I sometimes will get either a heated discussion or something will happen, or I'm triggered by something else, nothing that he said, and tears are coming in the moment. And he's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, this voice is like, suck it up, suck it up. And the other part of me who wants to attach to that emotion is like, just let it go, Krista. Just let it go. And I have to really check myself in that moment to let myself go, right? Because I have a tendency to stop that
Like
emotional
stop the
self.
emotion.
Yeah, stop the emotion. Huh. So I have to be aware of that all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a process of awareness and growth. That is not something that comes easy to me.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Fun.
That's why we're like we are.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's a little bit on our take on stress management. And I mean, maybe you can see yourself in this, you can resonate with something. And if not, carry on your merry little way.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, so yeah, like if you have ways of dealing with stress that maybe it's related to how you were raised.
Yeah.
Love to hear it.
Crisis management. We'd love to hear your take on how you handle things, or maybe have some techniques that really work well for you now that you'd love to share, because I'd love my audience to know a lot. We didn't cover all the little techniques and strategies that you can use, just some things that have worked for us. But if you want to chime in, we'd love to hear from you. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks for coming out.
And we'll see you again.
Thanks for coming to my room.
Next time. Yeah. Thanks for joining us.
Exciting
in the
to have
bedroom.
anybody in my bedroom. So this is really fun.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. We'll see you
you.
next time.
Thank you for joining me today on another episode of Becoming Sound. If this episode resonated with you in some way, please share it with someone you care about. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It helps to get this information out to more people who may need it. If you have a sec, I would love a follow on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. While you're there, hit the 5-star rating and give me a review. When you're scrolling, follow me on my social platforms, and I would love to hear your comments and feedback. Have a fabulous day, lots of love and gratitude from me. Please note, the views, information, and opinions expressed during the Becoming Sound podcast series are solely those of the individuals involved. The content of this podcast is to educate, inform, and for entertainment purposes only. This podcast series and the content presented does not constitute for medical or other professional advice or services. If you are in crisis or in need of help, please contact your medical or professional provider.